If your blood runs orange and blue, this is the pod for you. You're listening to Orange and Blue Bloods, hosted by EJ Stewart and Tommy Beer. Let's get to it, New York.
And just like that, he's gone. This is EJ Stewart along with Tommy Beer. This is Orange and Blue Bloods, a New York Knicks podcast hosted by Audacy and WFAN. And Tommy, we got a big show lined up. We'll be talking, of course, about Kyrie Irving, his move out of New York, out of Brooklyn, out of the Eastern Conference. He's traded to Dallas. We'll talk about the ramifications, not just for the NBA, but for the New York Knicks as well. We'll also talk about this big win the Knicks got on Sunday, beating Philly, a game that they had to get after dropping an overtime thriller on Saturday to the Clippers. So we'll discuss that game. We'll talk about some of the interesting developments from that game. You had no RJ because of an illness. You had a big performance from Evan Fournier and Deuce McBride. So plenty to get to from that one. And we're getting closer and closer to the trade deadline. And now everybody's aware of it because we saw the biggest fish maybe that will be available move this weekend in just a day after Kyrie requested a trade. So more trade rumors regarding the Knicks, so we'll break that down as well. Could Obi Toppin be on his way to Utah? We'll discuss that. So plenty to get to on this episode of Orange and Blue Bloods. Tommy, how you feeling?
Feeling good, brother. Plenty to discuss here on a Monday morning as we record. Lots to talk about. NBA trade week is going to be crazy. Already got a little crazy. And the Knicks' crazy 22-23 season, they authored another exciting, remarkable, surprising chapter last night against the red-hot Philadelphia 76ers.
Yeah, and we will get into it. But first, let me just remind everybody that this is, once again, Orange and Blue Bloods, a New York Knicks podcast that you can get wherever you get your podcasts, including the free Audacy app. Make sure you hit the auto download feature so you can get these episodes whenever we drop. We drop 3 times a week, so make sure you hit that auto download feature and subscribe to the channel. And give us a 5-star review if you're enjoying this podcast. Also, be sure to check us out on YouTube. We're now on YouTube on the Audacy Sports channel, so if you want to watch our handsome faces along with getting this great commentary, make sure you find us on the Audacy Sports channel. So let's begin with these 2 eventful games the Knicks played this weekend, splitting back-to-backs at home. After losing the overtime heartbreaker on Saturday to the Clippers, the shorthanded Knicks rallied on Sunday to defeat the Sixers. They lost to the Clippers on Saturday. They bounced back to beat the Sixers on Sunday at MSG. The team was playing without RJ Barrett, who fell ill prior to the game. He was a late scratch. After they went down 21 points in this game, you had a big performance from the bench. You had Evan Fournier coming in off the bench. He had a season-high 17 points, hit some monster threes in the fourth quarter. Deuce McBride chipped in 13 points. He hit a monster 3 in the third quarter. So all-around team effort from the Knicks. And you had your starters also, the guys that one guy's an all-star, one guy you hope will be an all-star soon. Julius Randle, 24, 9, and 7. You'll take that. Jalen Brunson, 21 and 7 for him. You'll take that as well. And defense was a big key in this one for the Knicks. They held Philly to just 40% shooting from the field, 28% from 3. So a wild weekend to consider. They were able to get that game on a back-to-back against Philly, who's one of the hottest teams in the league, coming into that game after the disaster on Saturday, where they make that another kind of a miraculous comeback that ends with a Nicholas Batum 3-pointer at the buzzer that sent it to overtime, and the Knicks folding in overtime against the Clippers. So wild weekend. Let's talk about this game on Sunday. Tommy, how was the bench able to turn it around for New York on Sunday? Because to me, that was the big key.
No question. Obi plus 17 in 13 minutes. Hartenstein plus 19 in 25 minutes. Fournier plus 28 in 23 minutes. And Deuce McBride, who all of a sudden is playing with a lot of confidence on the offensive end, plus 34 in less than 23 minutes. Just remarkable. And we'll talk about each of their specific contributions. But for me personally, I think it's important just to note how impressive it was to get this victory. For the team, for the coaching staff deserves credit. If there was, and I tweeted in the first quarter, and I thought in the second quarter, and again in the fourth quarter, if there was ever a point in time where you don't want to say you're okay with, but you understand a team letting go of the rope, it was last night in that spot. They were, the Clippers game ended like 9:30. By 6 o'clock, the Knicks game was supposed to start at 6 o'clock, but we had to bump it back because there was a Duck Duck Goose NFL tournament. They're playing flag football and come on, a rock, paper, scissors, shoot. Anything the NFL does is going to get, precedence over a regular season NBA game. But that's neither here nor there. We'll talk about that another time. 6 o'clock tip. So they're 22 hours removed from a devastating, heartbreaking home loss in overtime to the Clippers. The Knicks are without two starters, Mitchell Robinson and RJ Barrett, who was ruled out basically minutes before the opening tip after he threw up after warmups. So the three starters that were available had logged 40-plus minutes the night before. Knicks are playing the Sixers, who had won 22 of 27. That's the best record in the NBA and the second best net rating in the NBA, dating back to December. 2:30 left in the first quarter on Sunday night. Knicks, this Philly is up 33-12. Knicks had never come back from a 20-point deficit this entire season. If there was ever a time for a team to say, all right, this is a schedule loss. It sucks. It happens. Yeah. What can we do? Let's pack it up. Let's take this L and save our energy for the next battle. They didn't do that. This team doesn't do that. We can fault, and we do fault Tibbs a lot for his lack of X's and O's, all the other things. The one thing you can say about the Knicks since he arrived in New York is they come prepared. And there were a few blowouts earlier this season, and we got on them for that. But over the last few months, every single night, up big, down big, these guys compete. They fight hard defensively. So that's a reflection that, credit goes to the bench, credit to Evan Fournier for staying ready. And just this team, man, like you have to give them credit. Again, a lot of teams, NBA is a marathon, 82 games. You play on a lot of back-to-backs. You just, a lot of teams would have folded up and went home and we've seen the Knicks do that from basically 2001 through 2009, for basically 2 decades. We saw that night, continually. This team doesn't do that. Huge credit to those guys. So I just thought from that perspective, really impressive performance from the Knickerbockers.
Yeah, and in the post game, Tom Thibodeau was asked because they talked to Doc Rivers, just right before Tom Thibodeau came into the press room, and Doc Rivers said that he felt like the Knicks were the way more mentally tough, physically tough team in that game. And, they asked Tibbs, like, do you feel like that is really a reflection on the team you're trying to build? And I thought he had an interesting commentary on not just that, but also just understanding that this is a team that continues to have growing pains when it comes to closing games. And the fact that a team like the Sixers and Doc Rivers could look at them and say, hey, they look like a very mentally tough team. It's part of the core. So I want to play sound from Tom Thibodeau from last night talking just about that.
Yeah, no, we have a great group of guys. And so we have a lot of young guys that are in the rotation. So we're learning. And there's sometimes we're going to make some mistakes, but we want to learn from the mistakes and get better for the next time. So that's really the thing that we try to drive home, make sure the process is the right process, make sure we're working the right way. We put the necessary work into getting ready to play each game. And then there'll be some ups and downs. And so, but we know it's a long season and just concentrate on team improvement every day. So hopefully a week from now, we're better than we are today.
And look, if they're better from a week from now than they were on Sunday, then the Knicks will be in really good shape because that's a really good Philadelphia team that they beat, team that you said was red hot. And to do it without Mitchell Robinson being able to guard Joel Embiid for any part of the game, obviously Mitchell Robinson didn't play. Jericho Sims and Isaiah Hartenstein really made him battle. The guy lived on the free throw line because he gets every call, but still, keeping them to 31 points on 6 for 16. You'll take that, and he made almost all his free throws, but there may be a night where he won't make as many free throws as he did in that game. So that's a winning effort from there. You kept him under his average. The guy averages like 33 points. So credit to them for that. Credit to the defense on Harden. I think they kind of made Harden purely a passer, which I think you got to do. To me, when you're playing against the Sixers, you can't have Harden get, 12, 13 assists and then add 25 points. They really kind of kept him out of the paint, kept him from being a scorer, kept him only as a passer, and really a lot of his damage happened mostly in the first half. But we talk about this bench. First of all, credit to Tibbs for deciding to stick with Deuce and Fournier as they were playing great. Quentin Grimes, I thought, actually also was playing pretty well in this game. but Fournier had gotten so hot, and surprisingly, he started getting some stops too. He was guarding Harden for stretches at fourth quarter and did a pretty decent job. So credit to him. Obviously, he stepped up big. And Deuce McBride, again, the defense, and now the shot making, which I thought was also interesting as well, because as you noted, he's starting to shoot the ball a little bit now. There was a long stretch for this season where he just was not making any shots. And one of the things Tip said also in the post game was that the Knicks track their shooters, or all their players, and their shooting during practice. So they say when they look at Deuce McBride's practice shooting numbers, they're usually really great. So he had confidence that eventually the shot would come around, which is essentially funny to me because as Knicks fans had noted, and I had noted, like whenever Deuce McBride plays anywhere but an NBA court, he shoots the ball extremely well. We're not at practice, but we did see him at Summer League. We do see him when he plays in the G League. We did see him at West Virginia. He's typically a pretty good shooter. I don't know why he struggles so much in the NBA game, but those guys, their work paying dividends, and Evan Fournier staying a professional and being able to step in, and he said he learned he was going to be playing during the national anthem. That's how late it got for him in terms of him getting understanding he was going to get a lot of playing time. So a really great win by those guys, and big shout outs to the bench.
100%. Just again, the staying ready, staying competitive, is really part of being an NBA player. You mentioned Deuce. Final 3 weeks of January, he was 2 of 16 from downtown. Through 3 games now in February, first week of February, he's 7 of 10 from long range. So, again, credit to him, staying in the gym, staying ready, keeping confidence in himself, and it's really paying dividends for the Knicks. Another thing to point out, we had kind of derided some of the Knicks wins during that 8-game winning streak, and the subsequent 5-game winning streak was over 4 teams. Last 2 weeks, the Knicks have beaten the Celtics, the number 1 seed in the East, the 76ers, the number 2 seed, the Cavs are the 5 seed. They beat Miami. So just, that is another thing that New York can kind of hang their hat on. And also you mentioned defensively, Sixers coming into Sunday night, Sixers had scored more than 100 points in 29 straight games. The last time they had failed to score 100 was in November. The Knicks held them to 97 last night. So again, and on the season, New York is 20-0 when they hold the team to 108 points or less. All that being said, I just one other note on Sunday night's victory over the Sixers.
Yeah.
Every Knicks fan on the planet, they didn't just think, they knew New York was going to give back that lead somehow. They were up 9 with 3 minutes left. They were up 10 with 2:15 left. Every Knicks fan, and the Knicks tried to give it away a couple times. It was, Deuce had to save one,
he couldn't get the ball across half court.
Gardner style, looked like a D-back, tipped it back in bounds. And it just seemed like the Knicks kind of got some lucky bounces and some lucky breaks. I was thinking like maybe the basketball gods wanted to reward New York for just competing so hard, shorthanded against a better, more talented team. But to their credit, they hung on and, secured the victory.
Much credit to them. And I do want to give a lot of credit to Isaiah Hartenstein too, because I know I mentioned him briefly earlier, but I think he had 14 rebounds in this game. I mean, the offensive rebound he had on one of those missed free throws where, Embiid's there and Tobias is there, and he just muscles Tobias for the ball. It might have been the most impressive rebound I've seen from any Knick this season. I know Randall's had a couple of really great offensive rebounds, but to me, like when I saw him get that rebound, I said they're not losing this game, because they're playing with a level of intensity and effort that Philly is not matching right now. And I will say, evaluating Philly, and it's we've only seen Philly 3 times this season, twice fully healthy with Embiid and Harden playing together. A little bit of a disappointing night from them. They're a team that before the season I picked to go to the championship. So to see them get up that early and then blow that lead, and then like you said in the fourth quarter, you talk about teams letting go of the rope. Not to mention Doc saying that he felt his team just didn't show any mental toughness. They kind of let go of the rope, I felt like, because like you said, the Knicks gave them opportunities to get back into that game 3 minutes ago, 2 minutes ago, and they just didn't seem kind of all there. They didn't seem executed. They didn't seem interested in getting back in that game. So I think a disappointing effort for Philly for sure.
I understand Philly, there are reasons to believe that they can make a deep run and go all the way to the finals. Embiid is, I don't know what you do with that guy. I mean, he's just incredible. That Embiid Harden pick and roll is almost unstoppable. You're going to see it possession after possession after possession after possession in the postseason. When the game slows down a little bit, I don't know how you stop Embiid, but I am not a Philly guy. I'm not a believer that they can give me the Celtics, give me the Bucks. Bucks are my pick preseason. I'm still sticking with them. That's a soft underbelly. I don't trust Harden in a big spot. I don't trust Doc Rivers in a big spot. So when your point guard and your head coach, we've known about Doc Rivers. This isn't the first big lead he's blown, and he's blown a lot of big leads.
That is true.
Harden is just aesthetically, it's just hard to watch, and I've never been a Harden fan, especially at this stage of his career. If the Sixers, if I'm Philly, I get Tyrese Maxey more involved. I understand he's working his way back from injury, so he's coming off the bench. But if they're going to make if they're going to surprise people, and not even surprise people, they're a top 2 seed, 3 seed, whatever. It wouldn't be shocking to see them make a deep run. I think Maxey's going to be a guy. Maxey and Embiid will take on Maxey's role will increase, and Harden's going to give you what he's going to give you. He's great passer, underrated passer. He's always a great scorer, but he's a fantastic distributor as well. But again, that's just my feeling. I would not bet against the Sixers in a series against some of those other top teams out in the East.
Yeah, and a lot of the reasons people would feel concerned about Philly kind of showed themselves in that game, despite how great they've played. And it felt like they made some offseason acquisitions. They felt really kind of improved the toughness of the team. Added PJ Tucker. D'Anthony Melton has been a great pickup for them this season. So you add some decent pieces there. It feels like they maybe need another scorer off the bench. That's maybe why Maxey, they're not like rushing him back to that starting lineup, because they may feel like, hey, we can use that offense on the bench right now. Besides him, Melton was on the bench for a while, but then after that, it's George Niang really is a scorer. That's all he really got. So they're going to need probably another scorer. But interesting game. I love these matchups. The Knicks play some of these top-end teams, and you kind of teams that you expect to probably see in the second round or maybe the conference finals. You kind of get to see how the Knicks measure up. The fact that the Knicks were able to find a way to get that game, especially after the heartbreaker they had on Saturday, definitely a good win. And last note on this real quickly, because I feel like I have to play this soundbite. Evan Fournier was asked after the game if he felt like this is a chance because of how he played that he could be getting more minutes and more time in the rotation. He had maybe one of the funnier answers I'd heard from any Knicks player in a post-game press conference. Here's Evan Fournier when asked if he will be getting more playing time after this big performance he had.
Performance like that against one of the best teams in the league shows Tibbs maybe, get you back in there.
I don't think so. I think he said on his 9-man rotation, it was like a fun one-night stand. And yeah, I think he said on his 9-man rotation. And we'll see. Throughout the course of the season, there's always, sometimes a guy is sick, sometimes there's an injury. So, I'm sure I have another chance to play, but I don't think he's going to change anything right now.
A fun one-night stand is what Evan Fournier called that performance at Madison Square Garden against the Sixers. The honesty.
One thing I was thinking and kind of joking with a buddy on text was Leon Rose should have been on the phone with the Lakers or whoever and tried to trade before the buzzer sounded in the fourth quarter. Like, just try to, listen, you could get this guy if you want him,
Yeah, I tweeted during that game. I was like, hey, everybody, 29 NBA teams. This is Evan Fournier. I know he's been on the bench, but this is what he's capable of. He can bring this on a night-in, night-out basis. You should be knocking down the Knicks' door to get this guy on your roster. Get this guy in your rotation, because he's a knockdown shooter. He's a playmaker. This is what you need. So all jokes aside, though, credit to Evan Fournier for stepping up and playing a really high level, considering when he's been put in that spot before, he's not played well. He's not given the Knicks anything, essentially coming off that bench when there's been injuries and things like that. So do it in a weird way. I almost wonder if the fact that it was so last minute helped him, because you have these games sometimes where okay, RJ's out or one of these other guys on the wing are out. He knows he's going to play. He hasn't played in a while. Maybe he gets in his head. Maybe to know, right, during the national anthem, hey, you're getting in the game. You just go out there and you just play. You're not really thinking so much about, the circumstances. No one asked him it because I watched his whole media availability yesterday, but I almost wonder if that maybe helped him, because that's the best he's played in that circumstance this season.
No question.
And that was kind of the Fournier I thought the Knicks could get when he got moved to the bench.
Yes.
And then they tried it for a little bit and they did not get it. But Knicks win this one, a big win for New York. And it'll be interesting to see. I'm gonna hold the question about the playoff matches when we talk about Kyrie Irving, because I do think these Eastern matches could be interesting considering what we saw from Philly. But yeah, what you can say?
One other real quick thing on Sunday's game. I don't want to say that the best thing to happen, or the worst thing to happen for the Sixers was Barrett being ruled out, but RJ was awful Saturday night, and his plus minus over the last 3 weeks has been terrible, worst in the NBA over the last 10 games. Knicks have been outscored by 84 points in the 300 plus minutes RJ has been on the floor over this 10-game stretch. So again, I'm certainly not going to say the Knicks are a better team if RJ is sick, but a little bit less RJ led to Fournier, who was knocking down shots, a little bit a bigger, a healthier amount of field goal attempts for RJ Grimes, for Quentin Grimes, who made the most of it. Deuce got got some extra playing time. Part of that was because he was playing well and was rewarded thusly. But again, the RJ issue is rearing its ugly head a little bit, and he has not been playing well. So that may have worked. Maybe a night off worked in his favor, and it seemed to work in the Knicks' favor last night.
Yeah, it was tough because he had the great game against Miami, and then he kind of followed that up with a stinker against the Clippers. What I will say is, I did think it was interesting. We talked about this before. Tibbs went with Brunson playing with those backups, and the backups played great, as we've mentioned a bunch. And Tibbs has put RJ in that spot, and RJ against in the Miami game he's played okay, but we talk about that plus minus, and the bench is getting killed for most of the season. Maybe it's time for someone else to get that spot in terms of if it's Randall or if it's obviously Brunson. But that I thought was interesting to note. Those guys played much better with Brunson running the show with them than with RJ.
We had been asking Tibbs to stagger the minutes for Brunson and Randall, so one of them's on the floor to start the fourth. Maybe his hand was forced because of no RJ, but it certainly worked well, and that was the key stretch of the game. Knicks, one possession game entering the fourth quarter. You assume the Sixers are finally going to, start to dominate here and put these, scrappy Knicks away. The exact opposite happens. Obi 3, McBride 3. Fournier a pair of threes, and then Brunson and Randall to close the show. So well done.
Yeah. If Tibbs makes the adjustment of moving IQ in for Brunson earlier in the first quarter, that would allow you to avoid the three small guards out there, and you can keep Brunson out there, and then pair him with Grimes or somebody else, and have Deuce out there, and you're fine. So I think that's something the Knicks could definitely have to explore after that big one. But one of the teams, as we move to the trade deadline, and we'll talk about Kyrie in a bit, but one of the teams pegged as potential sellers at this trade deadline is the Utah Jazz, and we're hearing more of the Knicks' interest in some of their key players. We've talked a lot about Malik Beasley, but now another player has been added to those conversations. So Michael Scott of Hoops Hype reported that the Knicks and Jazz have had discussions about a deal that would send Obi Toppin and Evan Fournier to Utah in exchange for Malik Beasley and Jared Vanderbilt. Scotto says the Jazz are seeking a first-round pick for each of their veterans. And he's not the only one reporting that. Jake Fisher is reporting that as well, that apparently the Jazz see all their veterans on their team. They think they're all each worth at least one first-round pick. So in this trade, I guess the Knicks are trying to sell the Jazz that Toppin could be the equivalent of a first-round pick being sent to Utah. But right now in the negotiations, according to Scotto, the Knicks have been hesitant to attach a first-round pick to move off Fournier's contract, because in this deal, the Knicks will have to give up two first-round picks to get both Beasley and Vanderbilt. I mentioned that Fisher said that, as well, that both of these players are deemed to be first-round values by the Utah Jazz. He says there have been similar trade packages involving Beasley and Vanderbilt, not just with the Knicks, but also with Atlanta and Portland. So do you like the idea of a Vanderbilt Beasley package coming to New York?
I think it makes sense in a certain respect. As I've kind of said over the last few weeks, if I'm the Knicks, unfortunately, I think they're going to move Obi Toppin. I think it's probably At this point, if you're not going to play, if even last night when the rest of the bench, when Fournier played 24 and McBride 23, OB still only played 13 minutes. With Randall and attached at the hip with the head coach, it's just hard to envision a role. If Randall's healthy and Thibodeau's in town, there's not an opportunity for Obi to prove himself. And we're just not going to find out what player he is. That only gets more complicated as we enter the offseason when Obi's extension eligible. How much there's two questions there. Is Obi Toppin worth a considerable $40 million extension, $50 million extension? Maybe, but does he have that type of upside to be a player to return value on that contract? Potentially, but we don't really know. But more importantly, you can't give that much money to a player that's going to average 12 minutes a night.
Right.
And Randall's in the first year of a 4-year contract extension. He's not going anywhere, assuming the Knicks are content. So if you're going to trade Toppin, you should trade him now. In the offseason, his value is going to decrease a little bit from where it is right now. If you wait until next February's deadline, then you're really in trouble, because we saw, the Wizards, for instance, traded Rui Hachimura, a guy who's averaged 14 points per game for his career in 28 minutes a night.
Yeah,
certainly has produced more, has more production on his resume, far more than Obi Toppin, and the Wizards got 3 second-rounders back. If the Knicks end up using the 8th overall selection on a National College Player of the Year, and 4 years later have 3 second-rounders, to show for it, that's not ideal asset management. So again, part of this whole thing is asset management. You have an asset that has some value, so I expect them to shop Toppin, heavily in the next 3 days. As far as this particular deal is concerned, it makes sense because Vanderbilt's going to give you some defensive versatility. A 6'9" forward can guard the 4, can guard the 5 a little bit, can guard the 3 a little bit. Certainly not an offensive stud. Averages 6 points for his career, but isn't inefficient. 58% shooter, below average 3-pointer. You don't want to taking or making too many threes. 63% free throw shooter. He's going to get he's going to make his bones on the defensive end. As a connector offensively. And there's value there for a player that's going to come off the bench for you and as a role player. Beasley is going to provide the Knicks with offensive sharpshooting. Basically a younger version of Evan Fournier. On the season, Beasley is shooting, averaging 13.5 points and 3.1 made 3-pointers in 27 minutes a night, shooting 40% from the floor, which you don't love. Basically league average, 36% from downtown. He has 1 year left on his contract, set to make $16.5 million. So if you're going to move those pieces, I think that's the type of players you're probably going to get in return. Some upside there. Beasley can get hot and give you 25 minutes. Won't shock if he gives you 25 points on any given night. Vanderbilt is a Tibbs type guy, just in terms of his approach, energy, effort, mentality, defensive first guy. To me, it all comes down to the draft capital attached. Even if it is a first round pick and/or multiple first round picks, depending if they hold on to Obi. If they get a player, if they trade for Vanderbilt, I assume Obi's gone, because it makes no sense to keep Obi and have Vanderbilt. To me, it all comes down to the draft capital. And if it's first round pick and/or picks, it's all about protections. We know that all first round picks are not created equal. Obviously, the Knicks shouldn't even be entertaining any of their unprotected first rounders in 2027 or 2029 or even 2025. If they want to include one of the Wizards pick they have coming back, the Bucks pick they have coming back, that certainly makes more sense. I'm willing to listen. But it's important to note the Knicks and Jazz were on the 1 yard line on the Donovan Mitchell deal, which essentially broke down because the Knicks wanted to have top 5 protections on one of the first round picks they were sending to Utah. So there's not a great vibe between Danny Ainge, Utah, and the Knicks. We'll see if that has, if that ice has thawed a little bit. But again, Ainge is notorious for trying to extract as much as possible. So my sense is that it will come down to those protections, and we'll see if either side budges.
Yeah, I mean, when it comes to this deal that's proposed. I don't love it personally. It's not necessarily. Well, I'll be honest. I've always been a big Obi Toppin fan. If you put me, gun in my head and say who's my favorite player on this team, it's probably Obi Toppin. I understand the reality of the situation, his inability to get on the court because of the situation the Knicks have as a roster, where you have Randall as your star player and him playing at such a high level. So I understand that his days seem to be numbered. With that being said, I don't really quite understand the concept of bringing Vanderbilt in if you're going to replace Obi Toppin with the guy, because considering the way the Knicks play offensively, Obi Toppin has turned himself into a pretty decent shooter. So if you're going to put Vanderbilt in that position,
incredibly, Toppin has more 3-pointers, 50 3-pointers, than 2-point field goals this season, 49.
Yeah.
That's a reflection on the Knicks coaching staff poorly using an incredibly athletic, dynamic player who averaged 20 points a game for Dayton. But that's the here and there.
Yeah, exactly. And that's the way they've used him. So if you're bringing in Vanderbilt, who's going to play the Obi Toppin role, I mean, if Vanderbilt's going to stand in the corner, he's not giving you anything offensively. Now, I like Vanderbilt in a vacuum. I liked Vanderbilt. Funny, I was at Summer League a couple years ago, and he might have been playing with OKC. I forgot who he was, but I remember kind of watching him like, this kid Vanderbilt. I know he played at Kentucky. He didn't play a lot there, but really athletic, rangy, could defend. Like, I was very impressed with him. So I haven't been surprised that he's gotten now a lot of time playing in Minnesota, now playing in Utah. Like I like him as a player. I just look at him on this team defensively. I see where he can add some value, but as a 5-man, he offers no rim protection. So I don't know if Tibbs is going to be willing to play small ball 5 with him. And then while he's a good defensive player, offensively, like I said, he can't really shoot. I mean, he's shooting 33% from 3 this year, but that's on very low volume. He's not typically a shooter. So I don't really feel like you need to take him back in this deal. Like, you're trying to get Beasley, I understand. But I really wasn't interested in Vanderbilt for this team based on how the Knicks are constructed and how they play offensive basketball. Beasley, I understand, and I think that he's a guy the Knicks should be targeting. The first-round pick thing is going to be interesting because we still really it's so weird with the Knicks. Is like we know their plan, but we don't exactly know their plan. So we know they value these picks because they feel like they can package them all to get a star. So whenever I hear Malik Beasley, you're saying, okay, will we attach the first-round pick for him? I'm like, I mean, does this hurt your chances of getting whatever future star you're trying to get? I know you have a ton of first-round picks, but like, if this has any a chance of halting that, I would not make the trade. But if that's not the case, you tell me, okay, things have changed and maybe there isn't a star coming down the pike, then, I mean, definitely not any of those unprotected picks or any of your own picks. But if you want to give up again the Milwaukee pick, one of those Detroit picks, whatever, I mean, at that point, maybe why not? But that was the thing for me when I saw this was I understand Beasley, Vanderbilt. I understand because of like the type of player he is, like the defense, things like that. He definitely would fit in with Tibbs in that regard. I just think he'd be used terribly in this team, just like Obi Toppin has been used terribly. So that was my trouble with this trade.
Yeah, I mean, I think Vanderbilt, the idea is you get a guy that doesn't need offense. And, that's basically the way they're using Obi, 13 minutes a night. If he gets a couple shots, great. I think he had 2 field goal attempts. Vanderbilt, he's not going to stretch the floor, and you're probably not going to put him in the corner. Maybe he stays in the dunker spot, but just basically stay out of the way. Let our guys who we want to feed offensively get their shots up, whether it's Randall, whether it's Grimes or RJ or IQ or Brunson, who was ever playing, with that group. And Vanderbilt would potentially be more content to be less of an offensive threat in that sense. But I see what you're saying. If you right now you have Obi standing in the corner, basically, trying to draw his defender out away from the rim, whereas the whoever's defending
Vanderbilt, you're letting him shoot.
You're letting him shoot. Your weak side helping all day. You're basically 1 foot in the paint, 1 foot outside, and if he takes a 3, you're happy with that offensive possession. So that could be an issue. It's certainly not an ideal marriage, but in a sense, it could be. It would make more sense for him to play that role than kind of misusing Obi. If I'm the Jazz or another team, I love the idea of getting Toppin in-house. and finding
Oh,
out
yeah.
what type of player he can be. Because I think he's been badly mismanaged by New York since the minute he arrived. So you're basically, I'd much rather have Obi than a top 10 protected pick, or whatever the case might be. I just think there's a lot there. Not only is he going to contribute down the road, but he's going to contribute immediately. I just think there's a ton of untapped potential right there and upside that I'd love to kind of uncover and roll the dice on.
Yeah, it's funny because, like, when I think about it, like, of all the teams Obi Toppin could go to, I would not want to see Danny Ainge get the possibility of unlocking the player that we think Obi Toppin can be. That would definitely not be good news for a lot of Knicks fans. So we'll see what happens. An interesting trade rumor nonetheless. I think the fact that we keep hearing the Knicks attached to Beasley tells me that they're very interested. Now, will a deal happen? It may come down to that first round pick and whether or not they're willing to attach to Fournier. And I don't think I would do it, but again, they do need scoring punch. So unless if there's not another option anywhere else in terms of getting a guy who can come off the bench and shoot, I know they're looking at Sadiq Bey. You would think maybe Bey will probably also need. You probably have to attach a protected first for him too. So it should be interesting to follow nonetheless when it comes to the Knicks trade situation with Beasley and some of these other guys.
One last point on Vanderbilt. Very team-friendly contracts, making $4.6 million next season. 1 year left on his deal. So that's anytime you get a rotation player making less than $5 million, that's great. And one other thing in terms of the whole, you don't want to give up first-round picks because you want that massive pick package that you can send over for a star. Again, I think there is value there, especially a team-friendly contract on Vanderbilt, and even Beasley at $16.5 million. It's not bad. If I'm a team that's trading Devin Booker or Karl Anthony Towns, whoever that next star is, just throwing names out, whoever that next star is that demands a trade, if I'm Minnesota or Phoenix or whoever, I'd probably prefer Vanderbilt on a team-friendly contract. Even if you don't want the player immediately, you can flip him to another team for, for another. So there is, just because the Knicks, it's important to keep in mind over the next 3 days, just because if the Knicks do package some of these picks, and again, they need to consolidate them in some way, shape, or form. If they do consolidate them for a player, that doesn't preclude them from including that player that they've now received for a star in July or August or next December, whatever the case might be.
That is absolutely a fair point and needs to be addressed. So thank you for putting that out there as well. So the Kyrie Irving era in Brooklyn is over. After the star point guard requested a trade out of Brooklyn, the Nets shipped Kyrie and Markieff Morris to Dallas in exchange for former Net, now again current Net, Spencer Dinwiddie, Dorian Finney-Smith, a 2029 unprotected first-round pick, and 2 second-round picks. Irving's arrival with Kevin Durant to Brooklyn came with a lot of attention. Both stars spurned the Knicks and declared the Nets the new team of New York City, the new cool team of New York. But the duo shared minimal success on the court together. They had injuries, suspensions, sit-outs because of the vaccine. And because of all that, they played just 74 regular season games together. They won just one playoff series in their 3.5 years together in Brooklyn. Dallas now pairs Kyrie with superstar Luka Doncic. So the hope is that they can keep Kyrie on the right track and make a run at a title. Though the one thing I did read last time I was following up on the story, that there is no intention to sign Kyrie to any extension right now. There's a chance that he could very well just be a rental for this season, which is extremely fascinating considering that gamble that Dallas made, giving up 2 quality players. Meanwhile, attention in Brooklyn turns to Kevin Durant to see if he will want to stick it out with the Nets, team that he had requested a trade from this summer and then rescinded that trade request and decided to recommit to the organization. So a lot happening, and we will talk about how this impacts the Knicks moving forward because, the Knicks do have Dallas's picks. That's something to think about. But first, just on the Kyrie Irving part of this and the Kyrie's time in the city, how would you best summarize it?
Big three. When they got together, when the Nets traded for Harden, there was talk, and I quickly Googled it on Saturday. They ranked the best big three of all time, and this Bleacher Report article had them ahead of I think it was like Magic, Kareem, and Worthy, but behind Harden, Bird, Parrish, and McHale. It's just ridiculous. Ultimately, they end up playing 16 games together. Win one playoff series, 2 first rounds, basically since the 2019, since Kyrie arrived, 2 first round sweeps, 1 first round, 1 playoff victory, 1 Alex Jones Instagram post, one anti-Semitic film that's promoted, 3 trade demands, 2 vaccinations, just a nightmare, an incredible turn of events, which leads me to just to be absolutely shocked that teams are still willing to roll the dice on Kyrie Irving. I thought Nets did a great job getting value back from Dallas. I love the trade from Brooklyn's perspective. You get Spencer Dinwiddie, who is now healthy, playing well, and has succeeded in Brooklyn. Dorian Finney-Smith's a fantastic role player, great defender. Dallas is going to miss him a ton on the defensive end. So just from a Brooklyn perspective, you create more minutes for Edward Sumner and Ken Thomas, who exploded for 44 points in the first game without Kyrie, and just getting off of the toxic headache that is Kyrie Irving is addition by subtraction from my perspective for Brooklyn. And I'm certainly not going to speak for Net fans, but wouldn't you rather almost rather lose with Sumner and Cam Thomas and the young guys and a good team you can root for than win with a playoff round or 2 with Kyrie Irving? I'd be interested to see how Net fans feel. I think they defended him for a long time because he was on their team. Now I think they can finally let their vengeance out. From the Dallas perspective, the first thing I thought of was last January. So basically 12 months ago, the Brunson family, Rick and Jalen, were willing to sign a 4-year, $55 million extension with the Mavericks. This is not speculation. Rick Brunson has gone on record. I believe it was in a Chris Hayes article interview, but he has gone on record saying we were willing to sign that contract. The Mavs were discussing the same contract extensions with Finney-Smith and Brunson. Dallas declined. They said, no, we're going to give us another month or so. We might trade. If we trade Brunson, is that contract prohibitive in a deal? We're trying to, make a deep run this year. We're not sure about his long-term fit with next to Luka Doncic, et cetera. So right before the deadline, I think they came back and they realized they weren't going to make a deal. And they said, okay, Jalen, we'll do it. 4 years, 55. He said, nah, I'm straight. Brunson, Doncic had missed basically 3 weeks. Brunson went into the starting lineup, averaged like 24 and 7. We know we've seen what happened. Second half of the season, Brunson plays even better. Playoffs, Brunson, averages 35 over the first 3 games against Utah. Dominates Donovan Mitchell, interestingly enough. This offseason, as we know, comes to New York. Mavericks. So instead of signing Brunson for 4 years, $55 million, 13 months later, they trade Spencer Dinwiddie, Dorian Finney-Smith, an unprotected 2029 pick. Some fans were saying, well, it's 5 years down the line. Who cares? No, that means there's a greater likelihood that Doncic will not be in Dallas by the time that pick is made.
Exactly.
2 second rounders for a player that's quite frankly has not been as good, not nearly as consistent or reliable as Jalen Brunson. So from a Dallas perspective, a massive gamble, one I certainly would not have taken. The Mavs have one of the preeminent talents to come into the NBA in my lifetime. Luka Doncic has a chance to be one of the 5 greatest players to ever set foot on an NBA basketball court. No player in league history has played as well over the first 5 years of their career as Doncic has. He's just that good. Multiple MVPs in the Spanish ACB league before he came. This guy's credentials are second to none. His shot making, his just gutsy the way he approaches the game. If he ever gets in great shape, that's a big caveat there. Again, he has a chance to be one of the best players we've ever seen, certainly of his generation. To introduce to bring in that player, in that environment a player as toxic as Kyrie Irving, I thought is organizational malpractice. Could it work out? Sure. Anything's possible in the NBA. The one saving grace, I think, from the Mavs perspective is getting off Finney-Smith's money, it's not a bad contract by any means, but getting off his money and getting off Dinwiddie's, he has 1 year left on his contract, was only partially guaranteed, does allow the Mavs to enter next offseason with basically max cap space should they choose to part ways with Kyrie Irving, which I would suggest they do, no matter how well he plays for the next few months. Again, people are saying, well, he has to prove himself before he hits free agency. He needed to do that in Brooklyn. That was the one saving grace of him coming back for one season was, oh, well, he'll be on his best behavior. The dude, tweets out a link to an anti-Semitic film, tweets Alex Jones, refuses to apologize for it, gets suspended. They come, then finally returns, shuts up for a couple weeks. The Nets win, basically go on like a 12-1 streak. They look like they can be championship contenders. Kyrie says the reason we're playing better is because we're not allowing that outside noise. I'm such a great leader. I'm not allowing it. A week, 5 minutes later, he demands a trade, makes it public. The morning of the trade says, I may not, leaks that he may not play the rest of the season if they don't trade him, further tanking his value. This is a guy, keep in mind, it's important to remember, 2018, 2 years in Boston, the Celtics had a better record, had a higher winning percentage in the games he did not play than the games he did play his 2 years in Boston. His 4 years with New Jersey, 4 years with Brooklyn. The Nets have a higher winning percentage in the games he did not play than the games he has played. Yet teams are still enticed by that layup package and the really cool in and out dribbles, and are willing to give up all these terrific assets. And it wasn't just the Mavericks. Shockingly, the Lakers were willing to attach to, give up their 27 and 29 picks. The Suns with Chris Paul and Jay Crowder and draft capital. I'm shocked that teams have not learned their lessons with this guy. He's not someone you can count on. He's not somebody you can rely on. He's told you that over and over and over again. It's the girl that's really cute and really attractive, but she cheats on every boyfriend she has. But the guy still tells his buddy, listen, I'll change her. We'll make it work. She'll be loyal to me. Good luck to Dallas is all I can say.
Wow, Tommy letting the chopper ring. Did not expect all that, but definitely let him fire, man. Look, here's what I will say. First of all, before I even get to my point, I do think that we just got word from James Dolan, James Dolan came out of woodworks. He wants to say some words about this now that Brooklyn and the era of Kyrie Irving and the scary hours era is officially over. This is James Dolan.
Rest in peace to all my ops. Okay, that's enough. Now we really celebrating.
Okay, I'm joking. That's not James Dolan. That's Carmelo Hayes, WWE NXT superstar. Oh wait, no. This right here is James Dolan. Finally, my bad. Hit the wrong sounder. This is James Dolan on the Kyrie Irving trade.
Tell me a little something, KD. Don't you regret not coming to the Knicks? Don't you regret not coming to the Knicks?
Okay, of course that was not James Dolan as well. That was a random dude during the Side Talk video. But look, that is the feeling of a lot of Knicks fans. I mean, a lot of people are dancing on their grave. A lot of RIP Bozo for Kyrie Irving himself, who talked so much about even the season when they beat the Knicks. He said, "I love beating the Knicks," which is like, okay, dude. And then all the comments over the years about how the Nets were going to take over the city and this was going to be a new era of New York City basketball. So all that's done. In terms of the trade from the Nets in Mavs standpoint, I think the Mavs, so much of this is, I think, beyond even basketball sense. I think a lot of it is you have a superstar who knows he doesn't have enough offensive help. So sometimes it's just trying to show them that, hey, we're trying to get you offensive help. We'll get you another star to pair with you. Because these guys, they seem to think that this is the way to win in the NBA nowadays. So I think a lot of that has to do with really trying to entice Luka to say, hey, we're not a dumpster fire. And here, here's a star. And now you have a real shot to win because you have Kyrie Irving. All the points you make about the numbers and teams being better without him suggest maybe this isn't the earth-shattering news in terms of on-the-court success for Dallas that it may suggest, given Kyrie's pedigree as being a guy who's a former NBA champion, a guy with maybe the biggest shot in NBA history. But still, I think that a lot of that's a lot of what this is. And if you got a shot at it, I think you got to show Luka that you're trying. I do think from the Nets standpoint, this is a pretty decent return. I mean, at 2029 unprotected first, that's a big gamble for Dallas to give that up. Now, maybe they have a better sense that Luka's not going anywhere than I do. You hope they do because he's in their facility, he's in their organization. But I mean, this Dallas thing has felt like for even after last year's run to the conference finals, it's felt like for a couple of years now they've kind of been treading there and spinning their wheels. So this idea that they're going to turn it around and they're going to be a championship contender and Luka will be content to stay, I'm not totally convinced of that. So you get that 29 first round pick, that's big. And then for the Nets and these players, I mean, Justin Dinwiddie's a guy that, played well for them when he was there. He's played better since he got to Dallas. He was terrible in Washington. He played well. He's got to Dallas. I've always really liked Dorian Finney-Smith. Really good defender, really good shooter. He's the kind of guy you can win with. So there are nice pieces to get after losing Kyrie Irving. Do I think the Nets now have a chance to come out of the East? No, I don't. I think that they're still, I think, a worse team losing Kyrie Irving in the sense that on the court, I think that in these playoff series against these top teams, I wanted to make shot makers that you could possibly have. So KD having to kind of carry the load offensively, I don't think that's going to be much of a recipe success for this team. But I do think that there is now a foundation there to maybe build upon this team with these assets, whether it's moving these guys for somebody else or moving some of the guys they got in their team to get some other star or whatever. So it's not all lost in Brooklyn, but definitely a blow and definitely quite the embarrassment considering all the hoopla that came with the Irving move to Brooklyn.
I think if I'm a Nets fan, I'm more confident in my team advancing to the conference finals, making a deep run in the playoffs today than I was on Saturday. I just can't rely on Kyrie. Keeping Kyrie Irving past the deadline assumes that he's going to play again. Assume that he's not going to take 2 weeks off at some point. It assumes,
right.
And as you noted in our previous podcast, he's going to stay healthy. This guy that had injury issues. And as far as it's a Knicks podcast, obviously, as far as the Knicks impact, from the Knicks own the Mavericks first round pick this season. It's top 10 protected, so it will almost certainly convey. Will it be 19, 17, 22? Is there a better chance that the Mavs have a stronger finish to the rest of the regular season? I suppose so. Kyrie Irving will be motivated, I guess. But who's that backcourt going to stop? Like, when are they going to get stops in the fourth quarter, especially in the postseason? Kyrie and Luka are going to defend. You give up your best perimeter defender in DFS. Again, I thought they had a good recipe for success with a guy, kind of a Jalen Brunson type player who's not going to demand the ball. Will defer to Luka when they share the floor together and Luka rests. Then he can kind of take over the offense. Is Kyrie going to be? I'm sure they'll stagger minutes at some point and maybe get Luka some much needed rest. That could certainly be a benefit. But I just don't see in fourth quarters how these guys are going to share the floor together. Will Kyrie have a 50-point game for the Mavs? I think so, probably. If I had to bet.
Right.
But again, I can't count on this man, this individual, because he's proven to me again and again and again and again that when the chips are down, he's not did he hit a big shot against the Cavs? Was he awesome in that series with the Cavs against the Warriors? Absolutely. But that's what the Celtics told themselves when they made a big trade for him. It didn't work out. That's what the Nets told themselves when they signed him. And that's what they told themselves again when he, disappointed their first season. And that's what they told themselves again when he disappointed the second season. That's what he disappointed again when he got injured and refused to get vaccinated, which forced the Nets to trade James Harden for Ben Simmons, who's who's lost right now. Again, wherever this guy has gone, we have 5 years. We have a body of evidence of 5 years now where it hasn't worked out. Could it work out? And maybe the Mavs make a short-term bet. Could it work out for 4 months? Certainly. He's just that talented. I'll never doubt his offensive brilliance because he is just that brilliant. But if I'm wagering, if I have a superstar in place in Luka Doncic, for me, it made sense for the Lakers to roll the dice on the toxicity that is Kyrie Irving, because they're the 13th seed in the West. They basically they have nothing to lose. LeBron's 38. AD, who knows how long you're going to have him in house. So for a team like the Lakers, I thought it made some sense. Even a team like the Suns, it seems like they're obviously trending in the wrong direction. Maybe to shake things up and get back on track, that could make some sense. But for a team like the Mavs with a generational talent of Luka Doncic, to try to delude themselves and convince themselves that Kyrie will play hard for us and not cause any waves, I just don't get it.
Yeah, it's a gamble. It is a major gamble. It's a gamble that again, I understand because of the implications of, hey, now you can tell Luka you got him a star, but it's Kyrie Irving. so it's like there's a big but when you tell Luka that you got him another star. The one thing I will say when it comes to the Knicks and how this affects the East, one, the Dallas pick, we'll see how that goes. I'm not going to freak out. I know some Knicks fans were kind of freaking out that, this is Dallas's pick and Knicks have that pick. So will that, get will that worsen the value of the pick? I mean, we just have to see. I mean, they're going to have to play these games. It's not like there's we kind of forget there's not that many games left in the season. There's like only 28, 29 games left in the season for most teams. So even if they do play great, I don't see them going from this being the 20th pick to the 30th pick or anything like that. You're talking about maybe a 4 or 5 team move probably in terms of where this will be. The other thing as well is 2 other quick notes. One, this is a net team that I think Knicks will want to face in the postseason now. Like, we got to talk about these matchups that could happen with some of these top teams. And we saw Philly and how the Knicks can match it with them. Knicks have won 2 out of 3 against them this year. If you're talking about a net team without Kyrie Irving and it's just Kevin Durant, if you're talking about Philly, you're talking about Boston, who we think will probably win, but let's say they slip. Who's the other team? Cleveland, or some of these other teams that Knicks could play. If they're talking about a 2-7, 3-6 matchup, Milwaukee, obviously. Brooklyn's the team I'm running to because they're a team that now has a massive change in their team. So you're talking about the chemistry being thrown off already, and now you're banking on only one Kevin Durant, and you don't know what his health's going to be. He's coming back from this knee injury, taking him a little longer than we thought. So I do wonder in terms of how Brooklyn kind of holds in the standings. One, if Knicks can move up. But if there's a matchup that happens now, I wouldn't know no part of Brooklyn with Kyrie Irving. Now, if you're talking about a Nets matchup, I want all the smoke with Nets.
I respectfully disagree. We saw how poorly Kyrie played in the first. I think the last 4 games of that last 3 games of the sweep against the Celtics last season, he shot like 36% from floor, averaged 17 points. I think. Again, they got swept. I'd rather have. I don't want to say I'd rather, but I don't think there's a massive downgrade. You can play Sumner, give you some defense. Cam Thomas can give you 30 points. You bring in Dinwiddie, who's more than capable to. He plays well on the big stage. He's not going to back down. He loves playing against the Knicks. DFS is a great perimeter defender. Again, like fantasy wise, I'd much rather have Kyrie, but like from a team chemistry standpoint, Nick Claxton's playing at a much better level. I don't want to play any of those top teams. And if I had to choose, I'd probably still pick the Nets because they don't have that home run. Kyrie gives them that home run hitter that can take over in the fourth quarter, as we saw Kyrie dominate New York last week. So again, but I don't think there's a massive swing one way or the other. I really think the Nets did a good job kind of patching holes with their ceiling is maybe not be as high, but I think their floor is a little bit higher, and they'll be more consistent over the rest of the second half of the season.
And one final thing. NBA, do the right thing. Put Jalen Brunson in the All-Star game. Kyrie Irving, now officially a Western Conference player. He could take Steph Curry's spot. That opens up the spot for the East. Jalen Brunson and James Harden had their, WWE style eliminator, winner gets into the All-Star game match, and Jalen Brunson was declared the winner. So therefore, he should get that spot. That has to be how this goes. Let's get Jalen Brunson to Salt Lake City. He showed in that game as well that he deserves to be an All-Star. And he had we kind of glossed over it because we didn't talk about Saturday, but he had a monster performance on Saturday. 41 points. I mean, he was a killer on Saturday. I mean, he definitely is an all-star this year. Let's hope he gets in.
41 points on 19 field goal attempts. First player in Knicks history, more than 40 points, fewer than 20 shots to go along with 5 rebounds, 5 assists Saturday night. And we barely batted an eye. That's how good Jalen is in the season.
Incredible. But that's going to do it, though, for this edition of Orange and Blue Bloods. Tommy, let people know where they can find you.
At Tommy Beer on Twitter. Should be a fun week, fun week this week. Look forward to talking to you guys soon.
It definitely should be a fun one. EJ _Stewart, where you can find me on Twitter. Action EJ on Instagram and TikTok. That'll do it for for this edition of Orange and Blue Bloods, a New York Knicks podcast hosted by Audacy and WFAN. Remember, you can get these podcasts wherever you get them, including the free Audacy app. Make sure you hit the auto download feature so you can get these episodes. We'll be back later this week talking pre-trade deadline, probably talking post-trade deadline. So a lot of stuff happening. So you want to keep it locked here. Again, hit that auto download feature. Make sure you follow us on YouTube as well. You can find us on the Audacy Sports channel to watch these episodes. But that's going to do it for this edition of Orange Blue Bloods. For Tommy, I'm EJ. Take it easy, guys. Peace.